And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Pace and Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Tuesday, May 27th, 2025, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Cinemaster's Reviews. Sorry I couldn't be here yesterday at our normal time. Just had some family stuff come up, but I still really want to talk about the movies from this weekend, so I thought, hey, you know what? I have a slightly more free week than normal. I'm currently off. I'm currently on my break from work. So I say, hey, let's just kick it off to Tuesday. And yeah, it's going to be an exciting show. We are going to be reviewing Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, the 8th entry in the Mission Impossible franchise, as well as the new live-action remake, the new Disney live-action remake, Lilo and Stitch. Going to be a very exciting week this show this week. So I say we jump right in with our first review, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Like I said, this is the 8th film in the Mission Impossible franchise, the 4th film directed by Christopher McQuarrie, as well as what is currently being advertised as the final Mission Impossible film. This one picks up right where the last film left off, where Ethan is trying to take down this evil AI called the Entity that has gone rogue. The entity's human counterpart, Gabriel, failed his mission to essentially give the Entity power to take over the world in the last movie. So the Entity has sort of disavowed Gabriel, played by Isai Morales. Gabriel has now gone rogue, where he just now wants to gain control of the Entity to use it for his own purpose. So Ethan's crew, led of course by Tom Cruise, who plays Ethan. We have returning players, Simon Pegg playing Benji, Ving Rhames playing Luther, as well as Haley Atwell playing Grace. They are on a mission to stop Gabriel and to destroy the Entity once and for all. This has been a franchise I've really, really loved for the longest time. I really like the first one. Only movie I don't really like is the second one. But if I'm being honest, I don't think the franchise really reached its full highs until the 4th one, directed by Brad Bird, and then it became even better when Christopher McQuarrie took the directing helm with Rogue Nation. Ever since then, we got Rogue Nation, we got Fallout, we got Dead Reckoning. I think Fallout is probably the best one. I think it's honestly one of the better blockbusters of the 2010s. So coming to this one, knowing that we were going to essentially be finishing the story of Ethan Hunt, I was really excited, had a lot of expectations going in. I just wanted to be a fitting send-off for the character. And just to sort of start out on kind of a sour note, I don't think this movie reaches the heights of previous films, especially the very recent films. I really liked Dead Reckoning, and I don't think this movie quite gets to that high of quality. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think those films have been incredible, and I think they have set the bar extremely high and makes it very difficult to reach those highs. So I think the fact of me saying that, hey, this movie isn't quite as good as the films that preceded it is not quite the deal breaker that it might seem. Tom Cruise, Simon Pegg, and Ving Rhames are just as good as they have always been in this franchise. Once again, this movie really hammers home the fact that, like, Ethan is kind of treated as, like, this, like, godlike figure, and, like, if Ethan Hunt dies, the world dies, and there is no hope, and no one else can take down these forces. And Tom Cruise does a really great job of sort of, like, selling that, like, dramatic angle. Simon Pegg is always super fun as, like, this, like, slightly neurotic, slightly nervous field agent for IMF. And yeah, Luther, just Ving Rhames is still the coolest guy as Luther, the one guy that's still like, look, I'm okay being behind the scenes, just being on being the one that's like looking through all the cameras, being the one that's hacking. So he's always great. So yeah, our lead cast members are still doing a very, very good job in this film. Haley Atwell appeared in the last film as Grace. I thought she was really, really fun, sort of being this new female counterpart to Tom Cruise, to Ethan Hunt. had a lot of really fun chemistry, just sort of like a team member vibe in this one. This one, they sort of push a slightly more of a romantic angle now that if you saw the last one, you know that Rebecca Ferguson's character, Ilsa Faust, died. And while Haley Atwell is good in this movie, she doesn't have as much romantic chemistry with Tom Cruise that Rebecca Ferguson somehow was able to get out. I'm a huge fan of Tom Cruise. I've always said he rarely has romantic chemistry with any of his co-stars. Rebecca Ferguson was someone that actually was able to get a little bit of that out of him. And while Haley Atwell is good, I never really buy Grace and Ethan as a couple, especially the fact that this movie sort of kind of pushes that out of nowhere. Like in the last movie, we sort of started to see like little sort of like seedlings of that starting to sprout, but in this one we're supposed to buy that like they're full on in love, and I just never really quite bought that. If I were to say the main issues with this movie, I do think the first half of the film is extremely clunky. This is around a 2-hour and 50-minute movie. It is a very long film, and I'd say probably the first 45 minutes it is really taking its time to find its footing and figure out what it really wants to be. That first act is filled with a lot of flashbacks and a lot of like callbacks to other movies in the franchise, and I think that really just sort of shows the issue with the Mission Impossible franchise has really kind of been like standalone films for the most part. And this one, they're really trying to tie everything together, which can often be a very, very tricky situation when you're trying to thread a more complete film. And the fact that this movie just keeps on showing flashbacks of certain scenes in the franchise, like we see the knock list heist from the first one where Ethan's like hanging off the ceiling on the bungee cord. We really cut back to that like 4 times throughout the film, and at one point we're like, okay, we get it. We get the legacy this movie's trying to establish. Can we please just focus on the actual story that we are following with our characters? And I do think the biggest issue with this film is the fact that it tries to really force a legacy force a legacy on everyone at the last chapter that we are at, and that kind of becomes annoying, especially for the first half. But like if you're someone like me who has really loved these movies, you'll catch these little things, and you don't need to keep being reminded of everything that we've seen. I just think this franchise has never really taken the time to really establish its like full-on legacy that we've all grown to love, that it feels like it needs to overcompensate in this last film to really justify that. It does have there are some returning cast members from the franchise's past that weren't even in the last one that have like been returning from like many entries beforehand. They're not like the biggest returns in the world, but there is one major returning cast member that I really loved. I loved how they are used in the film. They're given a lot of fun things to do. We see why they might not be the happiest with Ethan with stuff that has happened in the past. But yeah, this person, without spoiling, was probably like maybe the highlight of the film. New cast members are introduced. We have Nick Offerman joining the cast. We have Hannah Waddingham playing a naval officer. They're good. They're not given like a ton to do. We are really focusing on the legacy cast members in this one to tell the best story. I will say once we get towards, I'd say the second half of the film, there's a part where we established that in order for Ethan to gain the location of the entity, he needs to dive down into the submarine and like full on like swim through the wreckage. This set piece is incredible, and the direction from Christopher McQuarrie is once again outstanding. Like Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie knows how to make these movies just feel bigger than most blockbusters. Like there's this one scene where you have Ethan like trying to like break through the ice in like this like Arctic tundra. And seeing this movie in IMAX, by the way, if you're going to go see this movie, I highly recommend you see it in IMAX. That is the best way to see it. And just you have this huge shot of just this is like the ice wall, and you just have Ethan sort of like laying there like in like cradle position, like almost dead, like oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? And the movie just, these shots make you like lose your breath at points because you're just at such awe of the filmmaking. And I think it uses the technology of IMAX really, really well. And the final set piece, I think you've seen it in the trailers. You see Ethan like sort of like jumping from plane to plane. We get a big plane battle towards the end. That is still incredible. The editing is super super fast paced. You're able to keep track of everything, even though a lot of stuff is going on. It doesn't forget about what's going on with the other characters, and they're doing thrilling stuff. So the final set piece is one of the best set pieces in the series history. So like while this movie begins very clunky, has a lot of things it needs to set up. It's tough to like really like keep track of anything. When we get towards the last half, specifically the final set piece, where Ethan is trying to fight Gabriel and take down the entity, and his team are trying to take down the entity, it is a really it ends up finishing strong in a really satisfying way. Even though this movie was teased as the final entry, I'm not gonna lie, the ending definitely leaves it open that hey, there could be another Mission Impossible movie if Tom Cruise and everyone else wants to do it. Personally, I think it would probably be a bad idea at this point to do another one. Like Tom Cruise, bless the man's heart, he's getting like he's getting older. He's in his early 60s now. He loves to do all his own stunts for these films, and I think if you just keep doing that, I just keep wondering like how much bigger can we really go? And looking at everything this movie does with the stakes of like, hey, if the entity wins, it's going to launch these nuclear codes, and we're going to be going towards a nuclear apocalypse. I kept wondering how much bigger can this franchise get. So I do think this would be a solid place to end it. Even though it's not one of the stronger entries. The score by Max Arouge and Alfie Godfrey is explosive to say the least. Does a really great job of just making it feel like really just loud and epic and making everything feel bigger, just like with the direction. So I do think the score really helped like exemplify things in a really strong way. And the last thing I wanted to say is the movie, with this being the final entry, it's not afraid to kill important characters, so it ends up keeping the side of the story in the scope, and it ends up keeping the stakes very high. And I do think that is a good thing, because when you get to the final film in a franchise, you want there to feel like, okay, why is this more important? And it shows that, hey, our characters' actions do have consequences. So I do think this is really good. Is there anything else I really want to talk about? I just want to talk about Esai Morales in this movie. I really liked Esai Morales as Gabriel in the last one. He was this very like mysterious villain. Like if he walked in front of cameras, the cameras would just stop recording him, and that was really fun. It really like showed that like, hey, this is like no other villain that Ethan has faced at this point. In this one, I thought his performance was just a little too over the top. You can tell that Esai Morales is really trying to accentuate the fact that his character is like broken and like really spiteful of the fact that the entity is essentially like broken up with him. And it honestly just comes off a little comedic, and I don't think that was intended for it. I personally would have liked it if Esai would have like maybe dialed this performance back a little. He's not in it as much as the last movie, but when he is in it, I did actually find it a little too distracting. But other than that, other than like the first half, I think when this movie does get going, I do think it is a fairly strong film. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, I'm going to give it a solid 7. It's definitely on the lower end of the Mission Impossible franchise for me, but I still do think if I was judging this movie as a quality blockbuster, I do think it gets the job done. You still have these characters that you love. You have this big action filmmaking, and at the end of the day, this could be the last time we see Ethan Hunt on screen, at least for a very long time. So if you're a fan of these movies, I would recommend you go see it in theaters. If not, this one isn't going to be the one to win you back. And even if you're not a fan, it would be weird just jumping into the final entry just like this. But yeah, if you do like these movies, this movie does get a recommendation for me to go and see it in a theater, in theaters. But I see we jump right into our second review of the night. Lilo and Stitch. This is the latest Disney live-action remake, directed by Dean Fleischer Camp. You might recognize that name. He was the person that directed the film adaptation of Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Really, really charming film. This is a remake of the animated film. If you know the story of the animated film, you probably can guess this one. There is a galactic federation that is doing experiments by making new aliens. One of the aliens breaks loose and ends up crash landing on Hawaii, where a little girl played by Maya Kealoha, a little girl named Lilo, adopts the alien as the pet, names it Stitch, and sort of like teaches it the way of family and Ohana. Ohana means family if you've seen these movies. Meanwhile, these aliens, Jumba and Pleakley, played by Zach Galifianakis and Billy Magnuson in this movie, are sent to Earth in order to try and track down Stitch. Like I said, if you've seen the original film, you know the story of this one. And once again, I think that is probably the major issue with this movie, is if you have seen the original Lilo and Stitch, it has zero improvements over the original. There are good things in this movie. I'm going to get into them. But I think that is the number one thing as to why I just can't say this is a successful remake, because there was nothing that I think this movie does better than the original. The relationship between Lilo and her sister Nani, not as good as the original. The relationship between Lilo and Stitch, not as good as the original. The humor in this movie, not as funny as the original. The themes of family and the themes of like not fitting in, not as good as the original. I think that is the number one thing that I think is that always sets these remakes back, is they never find a way to really capture the magic of those original films, and it always just ends up feeling very manufactured. Now, this movie is still probably on the higher end of the Disney live-action remakes. It does have quite a few good things going for it. Like I said, I think Maya Kealoha and Sydney Elizabeth are very good as Lilo and Nani. All the scenes they have together, you do feel that they are two siblings that are just sort of struggling to really understand each other. Nani in particular wants to be the parental guardian for Lilo. Obviously, their parents are out of the picture, so she's trying to be there for as much as she can, but she also has these dreams. The movie kind of like kind of mentions at points, but really only feels like it's mentioning it to remind you at the end, hey, Nani wants to become a marine biologist, just so that way it doesn't come out of nowhere and doesn't really play into the plot in like a major way. But that is there. The effects on Stitch are very well done. The CGI in a lot of these Disney live-action remakes can often feel very flat and very like dull. I do think Stitch looks really fun. It looks like what you would expect a live-action Stitch to look like. Chris Sanders does a very good job voicing the character again, and I will say the scenes we see of Stitch interacting with Lilo and getting into trouble with Lilo are probably the highlights of the film. There was a lot of funny scenes with that. The rest of the supporting cast is also very good, especially Billy Magnuson as Pleakley. Pleakley, if you remember from the original film, he's the one-eyed alien. He's very like neurotic. He's very like nervous. Billy Magnuson brings a lot of humor to that. I will say one of the more disappointing aspects of Jumba and Pleakley in this movie is, I guess my guess is probably to save on budget, so that way they don't have a ton of CGI. Is they essentially gave Pleakley and Jumba this inventions that way they can just take a human disguise. So throughout the majority of the film, you're really just watching Zach Galifianakis and Billy Magnuson just sort of like walk around in their human forms, which I think does take away a lot of the charm from that original movie. I found the scenes of where Jumba and Pleakley are in like terrible human costume disguises really funny, and it was a little disappointing that this movie doesn't have that. And we don't really have like a new funny replacement for that. The one of the weaker elements of this movie is I think the editing is super choppy, where like all these scenes there are a ton of scenes that just seem to like end out of nowhere, or we have like really quick cuts where we're watching like a character like getting chased by someone, and we're cutting back to them, then cutting back to these characters to the point where like we have really no idea where it's going on. And this is going to be a weird complaint, but the ADR, which is sort of like the sound mixing in the film, feels super off. Like there are scenes where like a character where you'll hear a line of dialogue that is just said off camera, and you can very clearly tell that was just added in post, and it just feels kind of cheap. and just kind of like unprofessional in a way, to a point of like, I'm like, why did they not just take time to like really like nail that ADR down? And that did come off as very distracting. Another major complaint I have is they make a change with the character of Jumba that is very frustrating, and I think kind of goes against what the message of the film was. Like, I think a fun part about Jumba in the original film is, while he starts out as someone that's trying to capture Stitch, he has a major change of heart and sort of exemplifies the theme of family and growing and changing as a person. Without spoiling too much, this movie doesn't have that, and I think that is sorely lacking for the themes of the film. Just a note I just added that I just want to touch on. It feels super weird watching a Disney movie like this that it takes place in Hawaii and presents Hawaii in such a like tourist attraction way. Like, I've never been to Hawaii. I'm guessing that's probably what Hawaii is like. But when I think back on that original film, where it doesn't seem like there were any tourists anywhere, I found it funny that when Stitch lands in Hawaii, he's immediately on like the shore of like this hotel. You see like a ton of airports of like different people from across the country coming into Hawaii. So I definitely did find that to be a really like just sort of odd decision. But yeah, like if I were to describe this movie, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it really just feels like a very stripped down and watered down version of the original film. And as someone that loves that original Lilo and Stitch, like that is one of like probably my top 5 favorite Disney movies. I really am just struggling to find a reason why I would say, hey, you should watch this version over the original film. If I were to rate this movie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, I'll give it a 5.5 out of 10. Again, there are some good aspects, but nothing is better than the original, and there are some decisions that I think were just sort of baffling with what they did with Jumba, with the editing, with the ADR. I just found it to be just sort of like a very like nothing sandwich of a film. If you have kids and you really need to take them out to go see a movie, I guess I would say go see this movie. But at the same time, I couldn't say, hey, just stay home and just watch the animated Lilo and Stitch. You're probably gonna have a much better time. But thank you all for watching this watching this episode of Cinemaster's Reviews. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the video so it helps grow our channel a lot. Next week, I'm going to be reviewing Karate Kid Legends, the newest entry in the Karate Kid franchise, as well as Bring Her Back, the newest film by the Philippou brothers, directors of 2023's Talk to Me. Very excited to be talking about those films. Thank you all for watching, and as always, watch more movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.